Good day everyone and welcome to the KVV Training Center. Today we will be looking at Spluma. Before we look at Spluma, let's look at the history of the legislation in South Africa that impacted township and township establishment procedures. Firstly and most importantly was the Ordinance of 1986. This ordinance for many years exactly depicted how township establishment procedures should happen, especially in the northern provinces and as it's now known Gauteng. Subsequent to this, there was quite a few legislations over the years that tried to implement a uniform procedure for township establishment in South Africa. Among them were the Less Formal Township Establishment Act of 1991, the Development Facilitation Act of 1995 or the DFA, which has since been repealed, the Removal of Restrictions Act of 1967, the Physical Planning Act of 1967, as well as the Physical Planning Act of 1991. It later became clear to the legislature that they cannot have one set of rules for the whole of South Africa to provide for township establishment procedures, as each area is unique and therefore each municipality should have their own rules and regulations providing how township establishment should happen in their area. SPLUMA stands for the Spatial Planning and Land Use Management Act, which is a national law that was passed by Parliament in 2013. The law gives the Department of Rural Development and Land Reform the power to pass regulations in terms of SPLUMA to provide additional detail on how the law should be implemented. Now the question remains, what is SPLUMA? SPLUMA is in fact a national framework legislation. In other words, it provides a framework, or a skeleton if you will, to allow each municipality to make their own rules and regulations confirming how township establishment should happen in their area. It came into operation on the 1st of July 2015, and the primary aim of the Act is to provide national, provincial and municipal spheres of government with a framework relating to the establishment of policies and systems relating to land use management. In other words, it provides the framework and allows the municipality the discretion to make their own rules, and not only allows the municipality discretion, but gives them an obligation to make their own rules, confirming how township establishment should happen in their area. SPLUMA places certain obligations on municipalities. The municipality must approve and adopt a single land use management scheme, and that must be done within 5 years from the enactment date of SPLUMA. This land use management scheme must take into account appropriate categories of land use management, compliance with environmental legislation, and provisions to promote the inclusion of affordable housing. Further to the above, municipalities must pass bylaws to formulate the procedures to give effect to and enforce the provisions of SPLUMA, and they must establish a municipal planning tribunal to determine the land use and development application within its jurisdiction. These bylaws, in other words, are now the flesh that's put to the skeleton of SPLUMA, where the municipality will determine their own rules and regulations on how land use management should be handled in their area, and the tribunal will be the governing body that will see to its implementation. Municipal bylaws that has been passed since the start of SPLUMA in the northern provinces include the City of Johannesburg Municipal Planning Bylaws of 2016, the City of Tshwane Land Use Management Bylaw of 2016, the Rustenburg Local Municipality Spatial Planning and Land Use Management Bylaw of 2015, and the Madibeng Draft Spatial Planning and Land Use Management Bylaw of 2016. What is the impact then of SPLUMA? What's important to note here is that SPLUMA will always have an effect if the land use rights are being changed. So for instance, if you need to apply for rezoning, so for instance your land is zoned as residential and you want to use it as a business and therefore you need to apply for rezoning of the land, then SPLUMA will have an effect. If you have a township establishment application, in other words, you're a developer and you buy a piece of land that you want to lay out as a township and divide in different urban, then you will have a township establishment process and that will be impacted by SPLUMA. Subdivision of land will be impacted by Spluma. So if you have a big stand that you want to divide in 2 or 3 smaller stands, you will apply for subdivision at the municipality, and therefore Spluma will have an impact. The same will go for consolidation of land. You have 2 smaller portions that you want to consolidate in one big earth, then you will have to apply for consolidation approval at the municipality, and then Spluma will come into play. The removal, amendment, or suspension of any restrictive conditions in your title deed. So if you want to start a business on your land, but there's a condition in the title deed preventing a business on the land, then instead of applying for the removal of the condition as per the previous legislation, which was the Removal of Restrictive Conditions Act, now you will apply in terms of Spluma to remove this condition. And lastly, if you want to open a sectional title scheme, this will also change the rights of the land, and therefore Spluma will also be in play. Now you may have heard the term Spluma certificate, and that one must obtain a Spluma certificate from the municipality. So what does this mean? The Spluma certificate firstly is only applicable if there was a change in the land use of the property. The Spluma certificate confirms that everything in terms of the bylaws of the municipality has been complied with. It confirms, among other things, that all funds due by the owner has been paid, all contravention penalties have been paid, all compliance directives have been complied with, that the land and buildings constructed on the land comply with the requirements of the land use scheme, and lastly, that all conditions of approval of any land development application have been complied with. In the Mpumalanga Deeds Registry, it's a requirement that for each and every transaction that is lodged in the Deeds Office, a Spluma certificate must be lodged as well. As from the 1st of June 2017, the Registrar of Deeds in Mpumalanga has indicated that no transfer of property will be registered without a certificate issued by the relevant municipality, indicating that the Spluma requirements have been complied with. Therefore, in Mpumalanga, for each and every registration of transfer, a Spluma certificate is required. This requirement is not yet law in the other deeds offices. Only when there's a change in the land use, then a Spluma certificate have to be lodged. It is important to note that the purpose of Spluma is to ensure compliance with municipal bylaws. If you want to ensure that your property is Spluma compliant, you can ensure that you are in possession of approved building plans for all the improvements on your property, that the use of your property is in accordance with the municipal zoning, and that there are no encroachments over the property building lines and the property boundaries. For more information on Spluma, visit our training center or call us on the number provided. I will also recommend that you watch the training on building plans and town planning. Also visit our KVV TV section where you will find interviews with industry leaders on this subject. Thank you. Goodbye.